What's up, guys? Welcome to Bipolar Boxing. Let's review the Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight from last night. God, that was not pretty. I mean, I kind of don't know what anybody else expected. My view on the fight, and I understand I'm in the majority. I know a lot of people hated this fight. It's just, first of all, I don't think the fight really should have been sanctioned. And when you sanction fights like that, the one thing I'll say about Jake Paul is I know it didn't look like he was trying out there, but that was his best path to victory was running around that gigantic ring. That was the biggest ring I've ever seen in my life. And his plan was probably to try to get Joshua's timing down and every once in a while just step in, throw a right hand, hope he can land, and if he doesn't, hold. And he kind of tried to do that sometimes, but this is just what you're going to see. Like, and for the other people that are saying like Joshua carried him, I don't think he carried him. Joshua, I know he's an Olympic champion, but he's kind of a destroyer in there. He's not really a the best pure boxing match I've ever seen Joshua have was Andy Ruiz 2, and that was beautiful because he didn't take risk and he sat there and boxed. But Andy Ruiz is also a trained fighter, not a novice like Jake Paul was. And all these boxers that are fighting guys like AJ or as somewhat at the top of the sport, they will engage at some point because they know how to defend themselves. Jake Paul hasn't learned that yet, and he hasn't had the experience in the ring. So, I mean, the guy was probably, scared shitless in there because he didn't want to get in there. And his plan to beating Joshua was better than Francis Ngannou's plan of beating him. Francis Ngannou stood there. He didn't use any footwork whatsoever. And what is everybody shocked that he got knocked out in 2 rounds? So I know it was ugly, the holding, the falling to the ground and stuff like that, but that worked to Jake Paul's detriment, however you want to say that, because Jake Paul tired himself out, and I said it in my video, like fighting off your back foot is tiring, and wrestling a guy that's 250 pounds, about 40 pounds heavier than you, is really tiring, and then you're just going to gas yourself out, and eventually you're not going to have any power behind those punches. And now Joshua has zero risk to get knocked out, and then he can kind of go for the knockout. But Joshua's not the quickest heavyweight in the world. He doesn't have the best footwork, so it was hard for him to track down a guy like Jake Paul. And and he finally caught him. He caught him with a really nice punch, broke Jake Paul's jaw in 2 places, and you know, I don't want to give. I got to give Jake Paul credit for taking the fight, even though I don't think it should have been sanctioned. And taking a broken jaw like that and just getting up and be like, "Hey, man, it's boxing. This shit happens. I wanted to see, where I am in this sport," which is, that's just his delusion. But the guy does believe in himself. Um, but like that's just the way I see it. I just see it was hard to watch, but I don't know what else Joshua could have done. Like people are mad at him because he didn't go out and knock him out in 2 or 3 rounds. Like AJ's been way more devastating to a lot better fighters than Jake Paul, but they didn't fight that way, and nor could they. Like just to give you an example, like Robert Helenius, he's a giant guy. He probably thinks he can get in there and swing with Joshua, and then Joshua knocks him out, and that fight wasn't competitive either. But it's very hard because I what I was telling one of my friends earlier today, like the analogy I used is like a baseball player who's used to hitting a 90-mile-an-hour fastball all day, and then you get a guy that comes in there throwing 50 miles an hour, and you would expect the baseball player to just be able to hit a home run every single time. but he can't because the timing is everything's just it's just different. They haven't seen that since they were a little kid. Joshua hasn't seen a boxer as bad as Jake Paul since he probably first stepped in the gym and started training. And maybe that's probably how early training sessions go, is somewhat like that. When you're afraid, like I tried boxing for a very small little bit, and I was scared in there. You're scared in the beginning. My coach also, like, he didn't have me teach me how to throw a punch for like a couple of weeks, because he was like, I want, if you're ever going to step in that ring and just do some sparring and stuff like that, you're going to learn how to defend yourself. You're going to learn footwork. You're going to learn the way your stance should be and everything. It's not all about just going out there and giving your best shot and swinging. It's about giving your best shot to win. And that's what I think Jake Paul did. But that's also why I don't think the fight should have been sanctioned, because that's just what he's going to do. But I mean, at least we got the knockout. At least 90% of the people that were watching that fight are not boxing fans, and probably closer to 95% of them just wanted to see Jake Paul get knocked out. Outside of I read an article yesterday from DraftKings. 92% of the money from DraftKings was on Jake Paul. Mine or plus 700 or some shit like that. Like, I'm literally watching a fight right now. Sam Hickney on the Callum Simpson undercard. Like, Sam Hickney's a 50-1 favorite in this fight, and so there are mismatches that we have in this sport that aren't aesthetically pleasing to the eye. Um, so I was telling my friend earlier today, like, I'm just kind of immune to seeing mismatches in boxing. I watch these boxers come up and grow, and with the route that this Sam Hickney guy is taking, he's early in his career. He's fighting some guy not on his level. They probably brought him up a weight class or two, and it's not really a fair fight. These are the fights that Jake Paul should have been taking his whole career. You're not learning anything fighting Tyron Woodley. You're not learning anything fighting Nate Robinson. You don't learn anything in those fights. And then to step up to a guy like Anthony Joshua, when you have all this delusional confidence in yourself, it's gonna get you hurt, and it did. Um, I look at this fight as, like, I don't see it as a part of our sport. I see it as kind of a parallel. Joshua was not going to take a fight until I what I've heard was like next February. So if he's sitting on the bench, he hasn't had a fight in a little over a year. Why not just get in, get a training camp, take, the $50 million is floated around there. Like, take the $50 million and just put on an event. But my main thing for all the people who don't like Jake Paul is his undercards. A lot of people, like I said, 90% of the people that tuned into that fight are not boxing fans. But now all those people, all those eyes know who Alicia Bumgardner is. You know, they know who all these undercards. I mean, Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor, they kind of became superstars after that fight on the circus that is Jake Paul. I'm not trying to say it's not a circus what he's doing. It is, but I solely believe it's good for the sport, because Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano would never be where they're at right now if it wasn't for one guy, and that's Jake Paul. Not Eddie Hearn, not Oscar De La Hoya, not Bob Arum. They can do what they can do, but all they can do is reach into the fans of our sport. There's not a lot of us, guys. Like, we can't support the sport enough to get these fighters a lot of money that they deserve. People don't pay attention to women's boxing, and now they do. Like, the Bumgarner fight. It was she looked good. it wasn't, the best fight. I was hoping she would get a knockout in that fight. But people look at her, she's a good-looking girl, and maybe even if, 1 or 2% of those people say, I saw that Alicia Bumgarner fight. Man, she can fight and she's a girl, and I don't watch women's boxing. Maybe I'll Google her every now and then to see when her next fight is. Stuff like that. That's the positivity that I see that Jake Paul brings to the sport. Now, the other side of that is everybody, like, especially on Facebook, like, I've been getting hammered, and like, these people that they don't watch a lot of boxing or anything like that, so alls they see is, Jake Paul's fights, and some kind of it leaves a little bit of a black eye because they don't watch a lot of boxing and they think that this is what our sport is. It's not. I see what Jake Paul's doing and I put it in a separate lane. What Jake Paul's doing does not affect um Noe Inoue. It does not affect Alexander Usyk. Does not affect Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, Teofimo Lopez. What he's doing doesn't affect any of them, but it does help these young fighters who are fighting on the undercard get some notoriety and just get some eyes on him. Well, Sam Hickney just knocked this guy down in the first round already. Like, this guy has no business being in the ring with Sam Hickney. I mean, and I see him every single week, these mismatches and stuff like this. Some of it is just a part of boxing. And Jake Paul's just such a hateable character outside of boxing that people don't really care. But Jake Paul deserved to be in that ring more than Francis Ngannou deserved to be in the ring with Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua. That might be a hot take, but the size difference wasn't good. But yeah, it was a shit fight. I admit that, but at least we got the knockout from AJ. And this doesn't do anything to AJ's career. It's just his career just keeps going on. All he's doing is he's got an extra $50 million in his pocket. These guys, I see them as kind of like private contractors. If you're going to step away and do something else for little to no risk at all and get yourself some money without, if it would have, fucked up like the top 10 heavyweight and there was a guy, like Cabial or something like that was scheduled to fight AJ and AJ decides to take Jake Paul instead, I would have had a different feeling about this fight. But that's not the case. This is it's a circus, it's a sideshow, and yeah, unfortunately, the people that watched it kind of get turned off about boxing. But they say that for every Jake Paul fight, and they're still watching. And like I said, they're still watching those undercard fighters who are making a lot of money that they would not have made with other promoters. Yokasta Vale, like she fought on the under, she was on the prelims. I don't know how many people watched that, but nobody knows who the hell she is outside of boxing fans, and now maybe some people do. So I'm trying to bring a little bit of a positive to this for our sport. I like I said, it is a circus, but it, I think Jake Paul is good for boxing. He's doing great things for women's boxing. He's got all these boxers. He just signed, Dubois, Caroline Dubois. She's great. Once again, she's from the UK. Nobody in the United States knows who the hell she is outside of hardcore boxing fans. Like, now maybe some people know who she is and they'll keep an eye on her and say, hey, maybe I'll just watch the Jake fight spectacles because he does put on pretty decent undercards, and maybe we get eyes on our sport. And I'm just the type of person that any eyes on our sport are good. I don't care who's watching them, because eyes mean money in our sport, and we need it. So you got to have stuff like this in order for certain fighters to get paid. And some of them are just sitting there. They're the best in their weight class and they just don't have the right promoter or whatever. Well, now they got Jake Paul, and just being linked to him is a good thing. So I don't know what more to say about the fight, but that's my opinion on it. I know a lot of people will disagree. Feel free to, you can hammer me in the comments and, just say, the fights are fixed or whatever. Like I don't know anybody who fixes a fight and ends up with a broken jaw in two places. There was plenty of punches where AJ, he didn't land too clean, but there was punches in there where Jake Paul could have just went down and stayed down and um and then then maybe I would open it up to it being fixed or something like that. But you don't fix fights and take punches like that in the freaking jaw. There's been at least three fighters in our sport who have died this year, and now that's more of an accumulation of punishment. Usually the boxers that die in our sport are in smaller weight classes. There's usually like a weight draining issue, and they get hit with a lot of punches, and sometimes it's an accumulation of punches. But the punch that AJ hit Paul with last night was worse than any punch that I saw all three of those boxers who passed away this year take in the ring. So if you think Jake Paul threw that fight and took a punch like that, like, I think you're out of your mind. And like I said, feel free to, you know, put your opinion in the comments, but that's just my opinion. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about the fight. The undercards were okay. I won every single one of the fights on the undercard. That Avius Griffin was the only one I was worried about because he got starched in his last fight and he got an early knockout. Costa Vale kind of struggled a little bit. Bumgarner looked good. That Canadian she fought was a tough girl, and the Anderson Silva Tyron Woodley fight. We got a good knockout out of that. That's another. That's just it's a circus part of it, but it brings so many more eyes to the whole event. And the other thing I'll say about it is if Jake Paul was had a golf match with Tiger Woods, nobody would watch that shit. If he had a home run contest with Aaron Judge, nobody would watch that shit. If he played tennis against Novak Djokovic, nobody would watch that shit. People are watching Jake Paul because he's boxing. So that's another thing. It's great for our sport. Boxing's my favorite sport. I love all the other sports, but boxing is my thing. And I feel proud that people would just watch just because he's boxing. If he stepped into any other sport, nobody would care. People only care because he's boxing, mostly because they want to see him get hurt. But like I said, I think the ends justify the means with what Jake Paul's doing. I do not think he's bringing down the sport. If they were to give him like a championship fight against Chayo Pataya or something like that a year down the road, you'll hear a different video from me, I promise. But I don't think he's ruining the sport. He's putting on spectacles and he's helping fighters on the undercard get paid. That's just what I think. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and let me know who you think's gonna win because AJ Fury's gonna happen next year. It's gonna happen, and people are probably down on AJ right now because they're just gonna say he couldn't get Jake Paul out of there within 5 or 6 rounds, but like Tyson Fury almost lost to Francis Ngannou, and AJ knocked him out in 2 rounds. But I'm pumped for that fight. A lot of people don't want to see it because they're past their prime or whatever. I'd love to see that fight. And then maybe if Joshua win or lose, I think his last two fights should be Tyson Fury, and then you got to go fight Deontay Wilder finally. Deontay Wilder looks like absolute dog shit in his last fight against a guy who probably not that much better than Jake Paul, to be honest. But and he fought in like Kansas or something like that. So Deontay Wilder is not a big draw. I don't think Deontay Wilder has ever been a big draw by himself. He needed Fury, and he needed those fights to get draws. I watched Deontay Wilder defend his title against, I think it was Johann Duhaupas in Birmingham, Alabama, in the Legacy Arena. That's where the University of Alabama Birmingham plays their basketball games. It's like a 5,000 seater. So like he's never been a draw. He needs a guy like AJ, and he doesn't have to fight again until they would make that fight, whether it's next year, a year down the road, or a year and a half down the road, or something like that. Um, he doesn't need to fight. Just that fight will sell itself, no matter how active either one of them are. So those are the two fights that I'd like to see AJ have next, and then just cash out. I know he's trying to be like this three-time heavyweight champion. It's not going to happen, and I almost think that AJ is not deserving of that anytime soon, just because you got starched by Dubois, and and then Dubois loses to Usyk. Like you're not going to rematch Dubois. You don't deserve that with a win over Jake Paul. That's your only fight in the last year or so, and and maybe like other. There's a lot of just like other contenders I want to see get their shot before AJ just because of his popularity. So I think AJ should take the other route, pick and choose his fights, take the money fights, cash out, take those two fights, and get the hell out of here. But let me know what you guys think, and have a good day.